You are watching Father Fish. Now please enjoy the video.
I really want to get back to the live food thing.
Yes. Yeah, I really get excited over live food because I really enjoy the ecosystem. And frankly, the result is watching. You can tell a fish enjoys hunting. You can really tell. They take delight in it, and to be able to provide an environment like that betta fish that I showed you earlier, that 10-gallon tank was already set up. It was running. It has blackworms in it. Obviously, it had hydra, but it also had scuds and various other little things. I take this little fish that was previously in a jar at a pet store, and I put him right into this little 10-gallon tank, and he just comes alive and immediately starts enjoying his environment, not because of the space, but because of the things he can do in it.
Right, right. People get real curious about food, and they want to provide this food, that food, and the other food.
Yeah.
The problem with doing that, and the problem is that fish feed by habit. They develop habits. Now, you know what habits are. Habits are something you do once, and then you'll do it again, and then you'll do it a third time. And by the third time, you sort of remember the time before. So when it comes up a fourth time, you kind of go after it. And by the fifth time, you're on it. So it takes like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps before a habit can be developed. Same with fish. You put a new food in there, and if it doesn't have the smell they're used to, or the texture, they're going to ignore it. They don't even know it's food. It's just something falling in the tank.
Yeah.
As they're running around, they may pick it up and discover they like it, and so they'll eat that. And then the next time it comes, they won't notice it the second time. But when they go through, oh yeah, try that, like that. The third time, they're still not looking for it, but they see it and they're on it. By the fourth time, they're going after. Right, the fifth time, they're on it. They're locked in. They're looking for it. They're ready for it. They want it. You put 2 different kinds of food in the same day. You have to teach 2 entirely different sets of habit to that fish in order for them to be voracious about both of them. Now, putting all that aside, with natural food, fish are prowling all the time. They're looking around, picking stuff up, dropping it, going around looking what's there. If there's something moving, they'll trigger on it and grab it. Anything that's moving, they're going to eat. So natural food, living organisms in the tank are the most natural kind of food that the fish can possibly have. And it's the one they're going to trigger on best. You get a fish who's triggering on live food and getting an adequate amount of it. You start putting synthetic food in there, they're going to ignore it until they don't. And in time, they won't. In time, they'll become habituated to it, and then they'll ignore the other food because it takes more work. This is like hanging there with your mouth open, waiting for somebody to stick something in it. You really don't want to do that. It creates a lethargic fish, creates a fish that gets fat, that's unhealthy, that's not active and moving around. It's not good for fish to feed synthetic, even homemade food. Live food is always vastly superior.
I feel that, there's some people who deal with just bettas. Bettas are very pretty. I like them, yes, but I also like other little things too. But I'm going to use the betta as an example because it's a pretty easy one to see. Bettas have a problem with, many of them, especially the long-finned ones, have a problem with fin nipping. It's a phenomenon that's out there. There's a couple of reasons for it. I know one might be because the fins are too heavy and the fish just wants to be able to move, and so they self-destruct in order to be able to move. But I've noticed that some people have reported that their bettas fin nip frankly out of boredom. There's no stimulation. And I feel that that would be a non-existent problem if they had something to do in their tank. And it doesn't even have to be a big tank for them. It just has, things in there that are interesting and wanting to look at. Actually, I've got pea puffers back here, and they're handling being a community fish, because there's something in here that they're always interested in. It's always gathering, catching their attention. And so they're not really looking at their other tank mates. They're enjoying the other things in this tank that they're much easier or much more fun to catch and to get. And
right. Let me say something about this whole food thing.
Yes.
Because I need to take back something and refocus it, if you will. I've made a point of saying, stop feeding your fish. Don't feed your fish. And a lot of people pay attention to what I'm saying. And they feel like they're starving their fish to the point where their fish are getting sick and dying. What I'm not saying is make your fish go hungry. When I talk about feeding your fish, what I have been talking about is the synthetic foods, the canned foods. You want to use as little of that as you possibly can. If you can get away with using none of it, you'll be that much better off. What you do want to do is provide feeding opportunities for your fish. Now, you do that by creating an environment in which the natural food, and we're talking about little fish here. We're not talking about foot-long cichlids. So foot-long cichlids are another matter altogether, and we'll talk about that. But that's not what we're discussing here. We're talking about fish that get absolute maximum 2 inches. Anything bigger than that, and they're not going to find adequate food in a food web tank. You've got to put it in. And there are ways you can do that still by using live food or by using cut food. It's a matter of doing it in a way that ensures that that cut food does not remain in the tank uneaten for more than about a half a second. It must be eaten instantly and never lay on the bottom, because if it lays on the bottom, then there's more food in that tank than the fish want. Fish eat and digest their food in about 2 hours. Little fish. Big fish are a little different. Little fish about 2 hours, which means theoretically you could feed them, if you leave the lights on and are up all the time, 12 times a day. If you did that and they ate every bit of it, that would foul the tank, because the waste they would produce would be more than the biological system in the tank would be able to take care of. The bio load, in other words, would be too intense and too heavy for all of the microfauna, bacteria, fungus, and so forth to be able to break it down. So by feeding live food, that food that's in the tank is itself consuming other material until it gets eaten. And when it gets eaten, then it becomes food. Its waste becomes food for the other microfauna. So it's a balanced kind of environment. That's really what you're looking for, to create a balanced environment, not to starve your fish, but to create an environment in which they can find the food that they want and that they need without you having to dump cans of dead stuff in the tank. I hope a little bit.
I discovered that at the beginning of this year in January. My introduction to 2022 was, we discovered that my daughter has type 1 diabetes. So I had this lovely little 55-gallon tank, heavily planted. It had been up since November? Yeah. Just before, no, I think it was over Thanksgiving. So that's when I set up this 55-gallon tank with plants. I could not, while we were in the hospital for, well over a week and recovering and focusing on essentially making sure that my daughter was alive, the tank got completely neglected. I didn't feed it. My husband certainly didn't feed it. And I come home and the fish are fine. The plants are growing. The light was, one of those little cheap Amazon strip things, and it was on a timer. And everybody was alive. And I'm looking at going, well, there's something else going on in here.
Right.
Because they're not even, they're not even hungry.
PWK pust. My green neons always hide, particularly when it's feeding time. How do I ensure they get food and it's not gobbled up by the other fish?
Oh, where is this question?
Pete, it's 907. PWK pust. APUST. Okay, this is exactly what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
If you will create a resurrection jar, go outside, get some leaves out of a body of water if you can find them, put them in a jar, put them in the windowsill, watch what happens. It'll become filled with microfauna. Excuse me, I had Indian food for dinner. It's talking back to me. It was wonderful, but
at least you had a good meal.
it got to me. Yeah, it's really nice. I had, I don't remember what I had. Anyway, I'll think of it maybe.
But you were talking about a resurrection. That's a really important question, because I know that not only myself, but a lot of other people worry that, a fish, not every single one of their fish gets to eat. And that's a legitimate concern.
Right. So by putting this material in your tank, you're providing a source of food for everything. Not any one thing is going to eat it all. You're going to have more food in there than can be eaten by everything in the tank. That's the whole idea of the food web, to create material of a prey, if you will, material that is so rich that there will always be food in the tank. Do you hear that? Do you understand what I'm saying? You cannot do that with prepared food because it will foul the tank. You very much can do that with live food because it will enhance the life force, the food web, the entire environment that's growing and developing in that aquarium. So by adding leaf mulch, what you're adding is not just the nutrition of the leaves, but all of the animals that are living on it, and giving them a new environment to grow and thrive in. All of your little tiny fish are going to be looking for them. That's what they eat naturally. That is their natural food. That's what they survive on in nature. Provide for them in your tank what nature provides for them, and they will be as happy and healthy as they can possibly be.
Yeah.
Talk to you later. Well, I hope you found something you've never seen before. Have a great day. Nice to have you with us. Come on back.